morning. So I'm going to speak about a little bit about early feedback and why did we actually choose early feedback? Well, according to the ISLE forms and the Q6 surveys, students really want to get some early feedback, again, feedback on their work in progress, but early feedback in the semester so that they can effectively complete their assignments. Also, according to the literature, so this is in agreement with the literature, so Lee and DeLuca state that students rate very highly timely and useful feedback. So that's again high amongst their preferences. So with early feedback tools, there were two main approaches. We can see here some of the tools that were trialled in terms of early feedback in the first 4 weeks of teaching. And then we had another approach where some lecturers used previous assessments as examples then to aid students in the completion of their assessment. So the first tool that I will talk about is early feedback, but within the first 4 weeks of teaching, so very early within the semester. And we had 3 lecturers within the institute who actually trialled this tool. So again, some accounting and finance, and then mechanical design and engineering. So Helena Ryan-Gately, again, she ran a trial where she gave an in-class assessment within the first few weeks of teaching to her students, again, a large first-year group of 80 students. The students had to complete the assessment, but then they were required to self-assess, to assess their own assessment and write a short reflective piece on that assessment. They weren't marked on the test, rather they were marked on the reflective piece, on the quality of that reflection, but also on the level of engagement with the assessment. Keith Colton, he ran a low-weight in-class test with a group of level 8 second-year students. And then we had Noel O'Neill in design and engineering as well, a level 7 program, who ran an online multi-choice, so a web courses MCQ style test within the first 4 weeks of semester. So just to give you, again, I don't have numbers around this, but some general comments and feedback from lecturers and students alike. The students engage very well with these types of early feedback on their assessment. So in general, it really does suit the first year cohorts where the students are making that significant transition from second level to third level, and they really just don't have much of an idea about the standards of assessment. So again, it gave some students reassurance that they were up to speed. It also alerted those students who were falling a little bit behind, and it gave them a chance to pose any queries to the lecturer, also beneficial to the lecturer who could, again, address any issues or areas where topics were essentially difficult. And so it allowed others to catch up. So again, marks were awarded, so if we go back to the first type of tool that Helen ran, so marks were awarded for the engagement part with the assessment. So the students were really made aware of the assessment and they really understood it. They also, again, had just completed the content and then they were assessed and then they had to reflectively write about that assessment. So it gave an opportunity to clarify any points of difficulty. With Noel, he commented with the online MCQ, again, bring in technology into assessment and feedback. It takes a little bit of time to set up from the lecturer's perspective, but once you have that bank of questions and web courses, you can use it as a template for other assessments. So it then becomes quicker, so you reap the rewards as you go forward. With the students, they commented on how it was nice, it was quick, again, to complete the assessment. It was easy to engage with. They could complete this assessment at home or in college, so again, it was flexible. It was an open book assessment, which they were very happy with. They did comment that they would like more time allotted for this particular type of assessment. So again, that could be amended very quickly within the web courses tool. And the fact that they got instant feedback, so they're getting the answers at the end of each question, at the end, or even at the end of the assessment, they really like that. Okay, so they're getting that instantaneous feedback, which is something they really like. The next set of early feedback tools that were trialled were essentially using previous assessments. And this was, again, all 4 lecturers took a slightly different approach with this. So I don't show up in here, I didn't trial these, I'm speaking on behalf of the other lecturers. So we have the School of Hospitality Management and Tourism, and then the School of Biological and Health Sciences in here. So I'll just go through the first type of tool that was trialled, so the actual details are in the boxes. But Geraldine Gorham, she trialled with a group of 85 students, again, both level 7 and level 8, so across the levels. And she trialled emailing students with some early feedback. So what this involved was that the students, and again, some of these would happen within the first 4 weeks, she emailed students with comments on a set of previous assessments from essentially from the previous year. So what she did was she included some comments again around, common errors made, maybe the marking structure, referencing styles, and things like that. And the students received this email very close to the submission of their assessment deadline. She also ran assessment clinics, which is a really nice idea. If you have the time, again, quite a big cohort of students, but if a module is co-taught, where she allowed the students to come in with drafts of their assessments, or this, I think, example was an assignment, so they could come in and get direct feedback from the lecturer. Then we have Louise Bellew from the Hospitality Management and Tourism School, and she worked with a group of part-time mature students. So these students were essentially working full-time in industry and were coming in to complete a part-time course. So again, coming from a completely different perspective, so the either ends of the spectrum. So there were 16 students, so a nice group size to work with, and she gave them assignments or assessments from the previous year along with the marking rubric, and the students had to read the assessments, mark them according to the marking structure, and then discuss it as a class. So I think what was quite nice about this was that it generated a really nice environment for the part-time students to come in, and they were obviously a little bit more open to that dialogue. The School of Biological Health Sciences, Natalie Hopkins ran with that should read 140 students, not 104, where she uploaded, again, this is large group teaching, so this is, again, large class size, very difficult to give specific, detailed, prompt, individual feedback. So a previous assessment, again, all of these would have been anonymised as well, and uploaded to web courses prior to the assessment. So the content that is delivered to this group is quite complex and quite bulky, so the students tend to be a little hesitant, a little reticent about the assessment. The assessment was uploaded online with comments. 3 main areas were focused on. So areas where common errors were made, areas where things were well done in the assessment, and again, Natalie's input as to where improvements could be made on this particular assessment. Uploaded to web courses, and all students could have access to that prior to their assessment. So instead of this feedback, these students are getting essentially feed forward, so feedback before their assessment. And then Zini, again at the School of Hospitality Management and Tourism, so it's well represented here, she used previous assessments from the previous year with this cohort of students who are 4th year students. So again, on that cusp, okay, so again, anxious and probably stressed out about their assessments, gave them the marking criteria and allowed them to mark the 2 anonymised assessments within class. So they got a really good understanding of the grade bands, okay, so that's very important in 4th year when they're looking for that 2-1 or that first class honours. So they had a greater, deeper understanding of the grade bands and the differences in where the marks are actually assigned. So just a little bit of feedback from the lecturer's perspective on a couple of these tools. So with Helen's resource, or Geraldine's resource, there was varied response to the feedback in terms of the emails that the students received prior to the assessment. So some engaged well, some didn't. The actual assessment clinics, they were very useful, so students really liked those. And students who engaged with the assessment clinics benefited. Those who didn't kind of maybe fell behind a little bit. With Louise, I think a really nice comment that came back from Louise is that the students, the mature students, really, really liked the supportive environment, and I think that's very important for students who are coming back to education. So for those students coming straight in from school, they need a nice supportive environment. They need that early feedback. The part-time students who are coming in from industry also need that supportive working environment. And they really liked and enjoyed the dialogue and the discussion of the assessment, giving them an idea of what it is that we want from them. With Natalie, obviously the feedback was before the assessment, so it was quite quick feedback, cannot give individual feedback with a large group of students. So it really does suit the larger groups. Natalie commented that there were very few or little queries compared to previous years. So it's that anxiety that bubbles up at the surface with the first year students she did not see this this year. It didn't necessarily improve the grades, but the grades tend to be quite good with this module, but it did aid in the delivery of complex content. And then finally, with Zini, it gave her fourth year students a familiarity with the marking schemes and rubrics, enhanced their understanding of grade bands, and generated that lovely dialogue and discussion, as opposed to the lecturer just delivering the brief, the student heading off and doing or completing the assignment. So it improved engagement with the assessments. The students really have that deeper understanding of assessment. The student feedback. Okay, so there's, again, we need to look at the student comments in a little bit more detail, but we have a few comments back from the students on these tools. The fact that in the first group, the students actually generated, the part-time students generated, from their dialogue and discussion, they generated a list of useful tips and hints for completing assessments, and this was shared with all the students on web courses, and they commented that this was very useful. The assessment clinics that Geraldine ran were very useful for the students who engaged with those. Useful to know the structure of the CA and the level of difficulty that is going to be presented to the student on the day of the assessment. So that's the first year students. Reduced their anxiety. They were a little bit maybe upset that they didn't get individual feedback, but as with any large group of 140, it's very difficult to give individual feedback. They commented that it was a very useful tool and very helpful to get the feedback before the assessment, to actually see the structure of the assessment, what it looked like. Again, being able to see what somebody else did in an assessment and learning from that experience. And it was a very useful assessment. So that ends early feedback. I'm going to jump straight in, if that's okay, into another tool that I trialed on my own. So I was the only one who tried to trial this one here, and I'm sure people already trialed this, but again, it just suited one of my modules. So this is the successive assessment weighting.